started?
Go, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
6, 5, 6, yeah.
Well, kia ora everyone. Sorry to interrupt. Tick, tick, tick. Nice, thank you. Hey, you got it. Good to see you. Hello again, everybody. So, as I said earlier, my name's David Downs. Thank you very much for coming along and listening. I wanted to start actually by particularly thanking so many people who supported me over the last year and a half or nearly 2 years now in my cancer journey, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Because it was quite overwhelming actually, the number of people in New Zealand who were supporting me while I was going through, first of all, just cancer and then going through this incredible trip to the US. So thank you very much for the support that you gave me. I also preface with something else, is that my story is unique. Everybody's got their unique story. I'm not trying to... I am a naturally humorous person, and I will... oh, that didn't need a joke. That's how natural I am. But I don't want to put my story on you. So if you have a different experience, your results may vary. But anyway, just to start my story, about now it's 9 months ago, my doctor sat me down in a hospital room and said to me, David, you've got less than a year to live. And so I did pretty much what anyone would do in those circumstances. I went down to Leukaemia and bought a whole lot of stuff on 2-year interest-free terms. And now, unfortunately now I've got 2 lounge suites. So if anyone's looking for one, let me know. But I always start with that because I want to just tell the story my way. I always wanted cancer was not going to rule me, I was going to rule cancer. And I'm the sort of person that naturally looks at the positive things in life. So I want to make jokes about the cancer because that's the way I'm disempowering the bloody disease. So you're not going to hear me be particularly reverent or solemn, I warn you. But anyway, this is my story of my cancer. So I had a thing called lymphoma. I'm sure many of you know about lymphoma. The lymph nodes and the blood cells, and they all blow up, and basically cancerous cells are growing inside you. So I had that for undiagnosed probably for about a year. And then in January 2017, I thought I had a cold. I thought I had a really sort of a mild flu, and I was feeling a bit run down. Probably many of you had these sort of symptoms, and went to see my doctor, my GP, and they couldn't really find anything wrong, and they said just wait a week, see what happens. But I was just feeling more and more run down, and my wife forced me to go to the doctor, basically. That's the reality. I'm a man, I don't really go to the doctor, that's for other people. But I went to the doctor, and pretty quickly, like within sort of 24 hours, once they realised that something was actually quite wrong with me, they did the whole blood test, and there was a particular number they didn't like, and I was suddenly going down to the hospital and I was getting scans, and I remember looking around the room and thinking, God, there's actually really sick people here. I don't need to be here. And I said to my wife, I'm just going to check myself out. I'm leaving. I don't need to be here. But lo and behold, they did a scan and they found this huge tumour, this big lymphoma tumour in my abdomen, sort of sitting around here. About the size of a soccer ball, or nearly the size of a soccer ball. They hadn't even noticed. That's how fat I was. I hadn't even really noticed it. But basically the tumour had been there for quite a long time by then, and that was why I had lost something like 12 kilos in about 4 weeks. I'm sure some of you have been through this. I was feeling really, really listless and tired and sore and all those sorts of things. So the doctor one of the doctors came in and sat me down and said, we think you've got this thing called lymphoma. We don't want to panic you. But they didn't say the C word actually. They didn't say the cancer word at the time. They said lymphoma, and of course I googled it straight away and went, oh shit, it's cancer. And they said this is going to take a while. This is going to take a while. And I said, like maybe to what, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock? And they went, no, a while is in a number of months, if not a year, to get over this. And I thought, oh my God, I can't deal with a year. So I remember going home and saying to my kids, I can't cope with the idea that I would be sick for multiple months, let alone potentially a year. And my youngest son, my middle son actually, Josh, said to me, Dad, you know the whole thing about how do you eat an elephant? I said, no. He said, Dad, how would you eat an elephant? And I don't know. He said, well, you start. And that was it. You basically start. And the reality is when you first get sick, you have no choice. You just have to start. And you don't necessarily think too long term, you just think, what do I have to do next? And then Josh also said, you better have a lot of room in the freezer because there's going to be a lot of leftovers. But that wasn't the point. The point about it is, when you first get diagnosed with cancer, many of you will know this in the room, it's just one of those things you have to think about. I have to just start, and then I have to just take a few steps at a time. So here are some of the things I learned going through my cancer journey, and I sort of interweave a bit what happened to me. First of all, I had to go into chemotherapy. They said to me, it all happened very quickly within sort of 24 hours. We need to get doing chemo, you need to be checked in, you need all this sort of stuff. I'd never been in a hospital before really, apart from having children, I'd never actually spent any time in a hospital. And I learned pretty quickly that one of the things about the hospital is that you can't choose your room. You don't get that choice, you're a patient. But you can choose other things, and that was quite a powerful concept. So probably the most terrifying thing about going into hospital when I first went in, the first trip in, was the hospital food, which is absolutely diabolical. That was scary enough. But the other thing about hospital, and many of you will know this, is when you first go to hospital, it's a very sterile environment, it's very foreign, it's not comfortable, it's not like home. I walked in, and this isn't my room, but it was similar. And I couldn't control anything about being in that room. They wanted me in the hospital. I had to be in there for 5 days at a time. I had to spend basically, the whole time in the room. I couldn't have a lot of people coming visit. There'd be neutropenic, all that sort of jazz. And actually, that first week of hospital, I found quite difficult because of that. I found myself constrained. I quickly found myself becoming a kind of a victim. The thing about, some of you in the room will know this, the thing about being sick is that suddenly all your control is lost. Other people are telling you what's going to happen, other people start doing things to you, words you don't really understand start happening, tubes going in, there's stuff going on all around. You feel very out of control, and it's very easy to slip into this kind of victim mentality, or this mentality of I'm not in control anymore. And I found that really tough because I'm not the sort of person that likes to be like that. And it was quite, it's quite depressing. It was quite tough on the mind. And my wife said to me, what are we going to do? You can't be like this because this is the months and months and months we've got this going here. So we decided we couldn't change the room, we couldn't choose the room, but we could choose our attitude to the room. And so she came up with this brilliant idea that instead of me going into hospital every time I went in, that actually let's pick a destination around the world and let's go on holiday. And it was a really cool idea. So we reframed the room environment and went on holiday. And so we went to many different places. This is my first holiday. We went to Fiji, and you can see there what we did is started dressing up the room. We put, we brought costumes in, we brought in props. And then it got more and more. So the first week it was Fiji, the next week it was Paris. We went to Paris, we dressed up the whole, made these big posters got made, and we put them on the wall. And then some of the doctors and nurses started getting into it, and they came along, getting dressed up themselves. They always wanted to come and see what the theme of the week was. We went to Southeast Asia, Vietnam, because I had a great holiday in Vietnam. And it was really cool how much it changed. First of all, it changed my mood, which was important for me. But what I didn't realise is it changed the mood of everyone around me. And this is the thing about cancer, you guys all know this. It's the ripple effect into everyone else that's actually one of the most insidious and difficult things to deal with. So my children were finding it difficult to come into the ward I was in because it was actually the geriatric ward. Don't judge me. It's North Shore Hospital, there wasn't a lot of room for chemo patients. So But doing this allowed them to sort of separate themselves a bit from what was going on, and the word got around. And that, the one up in the top there with the curly hat on, that's Dale. He's the CEO of the hospital, of Wellington Hospital. He heard what was coming on. He came to visit me, which is really cool. I spent an hour talking to him about the hospital food. Nothing happened. Still had some food. But it was really cool. And then, as I say, my visitors got into it. This was Irish Week. My mum's Irish, so she demanded that we have Irish Week, and then she made a whole lot of potato cakes, which are like these little, and she brought them all for the staff and the other patients. And as I say, all my visitors were getting into the whole idea as well. And I remember that I knew that we'd sort of cracked something because one of my friends, Glenn, who's in the middle up there, walked into the bottom of the hospital, and the guy at reception said to him, "You'll be looking for Mr. Downs, he's in room 10. Basically, the whole idea happened that, you know, we were now in control, and we had friends. We had Mexico Week, we had New Zealand Week. So basically, the whole thing really just changed the whole attitude and approach. And for me, there was, as I say, there was a lot going on behind that. You know, I didn't necessarily think about it at the time, but I look back now and go, wow, that was a way I could exert some control over my situation. And it really made me feel a lot better. I actually weirdly sort of started looking forward to it. I started planning my hospital weeks. I started sort of Googling, finding really cool images to make posters out of, getting the kids to help think of ideas. So it was all about that reframing the situation that I was in, and it really helped my mental state massively. And then one day, the nurse came in, and I thought I'd really cracked it then. I thought I'd gone up a rung in the hospital importance ladder, because they came in and said, and I thought they were asking me about the furniture. Did I want to choose some furniture? Because she said, "Mr. Downs, we'd like to help you choose, do you want to choose a stool?" And I went, "That's great, it's really nice. It'd go with the whole theme of choose a stool." I said, "I don't really, I just have a big one, maybe a soft top." And she went, "No, Mr. Downs, I don't think you quite understand what we're doing here, because when in a hospital they ask you to choose a stool, they're talking about something quite different." Quite different. So as I say, quite a learning experience. Speaking of stools, and I don't know why we were, but you brought it up. One of the other things I learned about going through cancer, similar sort of idea, is you can actually polish a turd. Okay? One of my friends said, "It's not true, David. You can't polish a turd." And I said, "Yes, but you can roll it in sprinkles." You can make the best of a bad situation, is what I'm trying to say. So for me, again, I was really in this mode that I couldn't deal with a year. I couldn't think about a year. I found it really difficult. I was off work. I was writing because I found it really therapeutic and cool. We'll talk about that later. But I needed to do things to kind of entertain myself and exert this feeling of control. And I was talking to my friends about how I could get out of stuff now because I had the cancer card, the mythical cancer card that let me do stuff. So my friends at work actually made me a set of cancer cards. So I've got that set of cards now, this whole card deck that they made with all these little sayings about it, my star sign is cancer, screw cancer, you have to do this for me. So I've got these cards now, and I loved it. I had them on my wallet. My kids could maybe get rid of them actually, because I used to use them to make my son mow the lawn, for example. This was a special request I had made. But I've still got a pack at home. Not because I think I'm going to get cancer again, but because other people might want them. And I used them to break rules. I was like, I took the supermarket trolley out of the car park. That's how crazy we are in Devonport. So basically, there was the idea of sort of making fun of cancer, and I was really kind of firm with, that I wanted to show people that I had a different attitude to this. When my hair started falling out, which happens pretty soon in, doesn't it? It was unpleasant, but again, I wanted to see how I could change the situation. So we went hat shopping, me and the kids, and got a whole lot of hats, did a whole lot of hat things going on. And then actually, the Leukaemia and Blood Cancer New Zealand people pointed out, Tim pointed out that it was Shave for a Cure week, and it was perfect because my hair was falling out anyway. It was like a double win. So we did this Shave for a Cure, got the kids along, we did the whole thing, dressed up a bit. We actually had the TV people from the project there doing a whole thing, and the cool thing was I managed to not only have my head shaved, but we raised a bunch of money for a Shave for a Cure, which was really cool. And if you notice, are Liz and Mark Farmers here, by the way? No, because I've got it in for those two people. They're my mortal enemies. Because I was proudly thinking, I'm going to come in number one, and then these two people, but there were two of them. So I figure, on an aggregate basis, I still won. But it was really cool, and I feel really guilty because my hair was going to fall out anyway. I said to people, you realise you're giving me money for something that's already going to happen. But it was really cool to be able to do something like that and be able to kind of help while going through this, and it was sort of making the best of a bad situation. That whole idea of help was really interesting for me too at the time, because some people reached out to me and said, we think you know, because I was quite public about this, would you like help? And I went, yeah, but I don't know what to ask for. I actually don't know what help I need. And I actually started getting involved with this amazing organisation. This is a little advertisement break here for this organisation called Support Crew. And they reached out to me, and I've now become involved in helping them grow a business around asking for help. Because again, one of the things about being sick is people will come to you, particularly in the early days, and everyone wants to help, and you kind of want help, but you don't know how to ask for help, you don't know what you need, and they don't know what you need, and you end up with this sort of uncomfortable weirdness going on, and everyone's sort of kind of left feeling unsatisfied. It's like marriage. Not my marriage, other people's marriages. But anyway, Support Crew, just this weird advertisement. If you're finding it difficult, it's an online tool. You go in and you say, here's the sort of things I could do with help on. Getting a lift to the hospital, meals, looking after the kids, looking after the pets. And other people can go on and go, yep, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. It's like wedding registries. It sort of takes away the yuckiness of asking and offering help. So if you feel like you need help, supportcrew.co is a really cool website. And I love the idea that I could help another organisation while I was going through my challenges as well. So it was all about, for me, it was about making the most of these difficult situations. And I remember there was one particular occasion that I remember where, because people, that whole idea of asking for help was interesting. My people were sending me stuff I didn't want, right? Lasagnas. Don't really like lasagna, and we had 12 of them in the fridge. So that Support Crew thing was good. My nephew from Australia sent me a little care package across, which was lovely. But in it, it had a pair of boxer shorts. Now, sorry, I'm going to go on a rant. There are two types of men in the world. Men who wear boxer shorts and men who enjoy the comfort and support of briefs. And I'll tell you that I don't want to leave everything kind of hanging in the wind. Right? I would prefer to know that everything's being taken care of downstairs in the boxer short department, in the briefs department. Boxer shorts should only really be worn by boxers, and only then when they're boxing. And they should probably have briefs underneath as well, by the way. But anyway, due to my adult state of having cancer and the fact that my nephew had sent me this pair of boxer shorts, I forgot all of that. And I put these boxer shorts on, and I wore them around one day. And it was the day that I happened to go into work to sort of say goodbye to people because I was going into hospital. It was the very week that my hair was falling out. Now, yes. You know. I remember when I first was diagnosed and the doctor said to me, you're going to get chemotherapy, it'll make all your hair fall out. And I went, all my hair? And she said, what do you mean? I went, all my hair? And she said, well, I don't know. Well, I can inform you, it makes all your hair fall out. All of it. Well, the difficulty was, I found myself in my work that day, and I was wearing my suit, and underneath, stupidly, because I'd forgotten I was wearing these boxer shorts, and I was walking around saying goodbye to people and going to hospital, and I see you, look down, and I thought, oh my God, look at that, someone's left a pube on the floor. I had another quick look, I looked down and go, oh my God, I recognise that shade. That shade of grey. I looked down again, there's now 3 of them. They're multiplying. And then I had this horrific understanding of what was going on. Of course, chemo was wreaking havoc upon my body. And I realised what was going on. I looked down the hallway, and to my disgusting shock, like a little gingerbread trail, was a trail of pubes everywhere I had been in the office. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I quickly tucked my pants into my socks. And I exited the building as quickly as I could, went downstairs, and I pulled them all out and sort of shook them around and down on the street. And then I realised, only later I realised what a fool I had been, because now anytime there's a crime committed in that part of the city, my DNA is everywhere. So be careful what you do when you get to that stage of chemotherapy if it's not too late. So for me, it was about making the most of a bad situation. Another lesson I learned is that you can be lucky even when you're very unlucky. Cancer is a very unlucky thing because it strikes, in a meaningless sort of a fashion. Anyone can get cancer at any time. Since I've been going through cancer and even later, it's incredible to me the number of people who have their cancer stories. It's a very difficult and prevalent disease. But at the same time, luck plays a role in this, in my story. Anyway, and again, this is my story. It does not work for everybody. But I remember this, thinking about luck, thinking about good fortune, and it made me remember a job interview I did one time. Just to frame this up, I had a job interview one time. It was a very senior job in Asia. I was working for the vice president, and I had 5 or 6 job interviews to get to a certain point, and then I was going to meet the big boss. And he was going to do the final interview, and that was going to decide whether I got the job or not. So I did all those interviews, got through to the final interview, sat down with this guy, and he said, "David, I've actually only got one question for you, and that's this. When you drive to the airport, do the lights grow green or red?" And I went, "What?" He said, when you're running late, driving to the airport, do the lights go green or do they go red? I went, "Why do you ask?" He said, "Well, I want to know if you're lucky." And I went, "Well, they go green, actually. I pretty much always make it to the airport. It goes green." "Yeah, actually pretty certain." "Anyway, thank you very much, you've got the job." And I went, "What a strange interview." And I reflected on that. I was thinking that a lot over particularly in the last 6 months since I've been out of this whole story, because I was thinking about the role of luck in my story. And one of the elements of luck for me was my wife, Catherine, and the amount of work that we put in together, and particularly her. So when we found out we had cancer, we did an enormous amount of reading and research, talked to our doctor, bounced things off her. When we found out that it was coming back and different things were happening, we did a lot of research. We just did an enormous amount of reading and work and understanding what was going on and talking to people like the Leukaemia and Blood Cancer New Zealand, just to find out. So there was a lot of work involved. The other piece of luck for me was I decided pretty early on in the piece that I wanted to be quite public with what was going on because I was finding it quite interesting. So I was writing articles for stuff, and every week I would write an article and write something and I put it out there. And after a while, it was really kind of important for me. It was kind of documenting my journey, but also I was getting a lot of cool feedback, and people were getting benefits out of it. And that's where another piece of luck suddenly came in, because I got contacted out of the blue over LinkedIn from someone who'd read one of my articles, and he said, "Just wanted to let you know, I've read your article. It's a very cool article. Blah 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 blah." And I was going, "This is quite interesting. This guy seems to know a lot about what I'm going through." And I looked him up, and it turned out that he was the head of immunology at Pfizer, a big drug company in the States. And he said to me, "If I could ever do anything to help you, let me know." And it was really cool because he just had connected, because he'd been to New Zealand on holiday literally 20 years ago, and really likes New Zealand and reads New Zealand newspapers online because it's better than the American newspapers. It's kind of this point. Our leaders aren't quite as crazy. And so, anyway, he reached out and said if I could do any good, let me know. At the time, I didn't need his help, but later I did. And I reached out to him and said, "Actually, Michael," this is him on the bottom right here, Michael. I said, "I do need your help." And within 24 hours, he had connected me with amazing people. He had connected me with a friend of his who was sort of a specialist in lymphoma area that I was in, who connected me with a researcher at Harvard University, who connected me with a doctor. And very quickly, kind of this opportunity opened up. So I talked earlier about how I was told I had 6 months left to live, or less than a year to live. This was exactly the same day, I'm not joking you, that this all happened. Because I emailed him and suddenly all this stuff happened, all this amazing stroke of luck. And so he said to me, what's happening at the moment, where are you at? I said, "Oh, the cancer's come back again. We've got supposed to do a stem cell transplant on Monday." This is like Friday. He's put me in touch with the doctor, and we ended up having a phone call with a doctor in Harvard. And this guy was very, very careful not to overstep the mark, just let me be clear. But we had a good chat, and he asked me to send him some information, and he said to me, this is very difficult for me to do as a doctor, but I really think that you shouldn't do the stem cell transplant on Monday. I think that's a bad idea. And so anyway, then I hung up the phone, and then I had the joy of ringing my doctor in New Zealand and saying, your advice that you were giving us, well, we've decided we're not going to follow your advice because I met this guy on the internet. He's got a really good idea for me. And I had huge sympathy for doctors, by the way. Nothing but respect for doctors. They have a lot of people giving that sort of information. But this turned out to be quite a legit option, and they researched and talked to each other, and they realised it was an option for me to do this therapy called CAR T, which I'll talk about shortly. So I went from this incredible low of being told, actually your cancer's come back, you've probably got less than a year to live, to an incredible high of, actually we might be able to get you an option, it's going to take some work, but we think we can get you on a clinical trial, to suddenly then I got an email the next day from the hospital, and this is the doctor here, the billing people from the hospital, and they said, blah, 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 Mr. Downs, yes, in a similar case, you might be on a clinical trial, we thought you might know, it could cost $1 million. So suddenly I was at an incredible low again. This is a real roller coaster ride, and by the way, I'm quite sick, so going through this was quite tough. So luck was incredible, it was all over the place, my luck this few days. Anyway, and I'll talk more a little bit about the costs tomorrow when I do the talk properly. But I went back to them and said, you know, how are you, this whole $1 million thing? You know, I'm a bit short. Maybe can I have a discount? A discount for cash. I didn't even have any cash. Can I have a discount? And they said, oh yes, because you're a self-payer, we'll give you a discount. We'll give you a 25% discount. So now it's $750,000 US. So still an enormous amount of money, plus my airfares, plus all that sort of stuff. I didn't have that money. I don't have that sort of money. But anyway, the doctor said to me, just get on a plane, get up here, you don't have a lot of time, we need to see you quickly. I was on the way to the airport, and the billing people called me again and said, Mr. Downs, we noticed you've got an appointment on Tuesday, but you need to pay the deposit. And I said, oh, okay, cool, what's the deposit? And they said, well, the deposit is $750,000 US. And I said, can you give me a detailed estimate of that? And they said, okay, we'll email you something through. This was the email. It says, hospital care, $750,000. The good news is professional charges are included. So I had this huge problem on my hands then, which was I don't have that money. No one has that sort of money. I couldn't necessarily get access to it. So we did what we always, you know, we were lucky, very, very lucky people. We have, you know, us and the bank owned a house together. So we put our bit of the house on the market. We told the bank and said, what else can we do? You know, we've got no choice. I did say to my wife, should we not bother and just sort of crawl into a corner and, you know, have a good year and forget about the whole thing? But of course, you know, neither of us are built that way. And she said, I would never forgive myself if we didn't give this a try. So we put the house on the market. We got ourselves ready to go, and then other amazing pieces of luck started to happen. So friends of mine, not even friends of close friends, but friends of mine decided that they didn't want to let that happen. They started doing a Give a Little campaign for me, which was amazing. Incredible support really, really quickly. We'll talk a minute about another person that's going through a similar challenge at the moment. And that raised a bunch of money, and then some other friends of mine who are stand-up comedians, much better than me, decided to do a show. So we did a show in Auckland and we raised another bunch of money, and we ended up quite quickly getting to enough money that I could pay the hospital a more reasonable deposit than they asked me for. And it meant in the long run actually that I didn't have to sell my house, which was pretty cool. So I mean, yes, it's cost us a lot of money, but it didn't literally cost the house. And so I've ended up with this scenario of these incredible strokes of luck happening. You know, getting cancer was a stroke of luck, not good luck, but luck. And then getting onto the program, and then being able to do it without selling the house. And it made me reflect back again on this whole concept of luck. And I'm thinking back now on that story that I told you earlier about my job interview and the traffic lights. And I thought, you know, what was that guy really asking me? He wasn't asking me necessarily, am I lucky? Because lucky's not necessarily true. He was asking me about my perception of luck. When I go to the hospital, to the airport, and I'm running late, the lights are random. They go red or green. I don't really know, but my perception is that they go green for me. I perceive the world in a certain way that is an optimistic way of perceiving the world, and I work hard as well. And those things together are very powerful, and it's all about mind. Again, it comes back to your mind and how you feel yourself in control. So for me, I believe that you can be an optimist or a pessimist, and whichever one you choose, you're going to get really good at it by practicing. And some people practice pessimism, unfortunately. I practice optimism. Good news for people who are not naturally optimistic is that you can absolutely learn how to be optimistic. You can rewire your brain. There's a lot of neuroscience around about neuroplasticity, about the idea that you can change the way you think. So that positive attitude, which used to be like, hey, buck up, have a positive attitude, actually makes a difference. So for me, that was a big learning through this whole exercise too. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to go a little bit quicker. I want to tell you a little bit about CAR T. So the thing that I was, this opportunity that I had in Boston, or in America, was around this treatment called CAR T, CAR T cell therapy. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. Rob Wellington, who's here tonight, and me. A little bit more detail. This is a layman's view. Basically, this is a cancer cell. The thing about cancer cells, as you know, is they look, to all intents and purposes to your body, they are normal cells that have just gone a bit wrong, and they're starting to grow in certain ways, and they're out of control. And so your body's immune system, the normal way of dealing with problems for certain types of cancers, just doesn't see it. It's just, cancer's growing, and your immune system's just kind of ignoring it. And there are these little things that sort of stick up off the top of cells, and they can be, if you're very clever and you're an amazing scientist and you work on it for 20 years in a lab, you can work out ways to target those cells that are growing badly. Rob will give you the more, the proper definition tomorrow. But anyway, whereas chemotherapy comes in and just kills everything that's growing fast, these things are actually targeting cancer cells with a particular expression of a particular gene. So I went into this whole process, and it was pretty good. I'm actually going to skip ahead a few slides because otherwise it would get quite boring for us all. And I ended up on this clinical trial in Boston, in Massachusetts. As I say, this is where my $250,000 or $750,000 problem. So Massachusetts General happens to be one of the hospitals that's trialing this CAR T therapy, which is using the body's immune system to fight cancer. This is an incredible breakthrough. So the first step they do is they do an apheresis, which is like an apheresis, like when you do a stem cell transplant. They're taking some of your blood, they're skimming a certain element, and they're keeping that. And then they take that away to a laboratory, and they treat it in a certain way, and that then turns those cells from your own body into cancer-killing cells. So it makes those cells recognize cancers in your body. Today it's only working for a very limited sort of type of cancers and limited numbers of people because it's trials, but it has promise for lots and lots of things in the future, we hope. So then those cells come back in this tiny little tube. It's like literally sort of 2 or 3 mils. They put those 2 or 3 mils inside me, and basically what happens there is, I'll talk while this little video is running, is my own T cells, which is a component of your body, of your immune system, then come back into your body. They now recognize the cancer cell because they can see that this thing shouldn't be like this. And they do what all good T cells do, and they start replicating and growing inside the body and then attacking the cell. So this is just what happens normally to you when you get an infection or an illness or a cut. You get a redness and a soreness because that's your T cells kind of attacking the problem. So this apheresis comes along, they take the cells out of the body. They treat them in the laboratory, as I said earlier, by injecting a piece of DNA into the T cell and genetically modifying my own T cell. So I'm a GMO. I am a genetically modified organism. I had to apply for a license to come back to New Zealand. And then they told me, pull your head in, David, you don't need a license. You're just being an idiot. But I am a GMO. And then those T cells, those multiplied T cells, go into your body and then they attack the cancer. And then they just do what any good immune system thing does. It actually just tells the cell to die, and the cells just break up and sort of vaporize. Now, in CAR T, in the CAR T trial I'm in, that process takes about 12 days. So from the day they put it in, the cells have wandered around, they're starting to replicate and grow, they recognize the cancer, and they start to attack the cancer. And basically, if you're going to get an illness, you'll get it during that time, or a side effect you get during that time. I was very lucky, I had very, very few side effects, but some people have some quite horrendous ones we'll talk about tomorrow. But the process has incredible promise because it's using the body's own immune system to fight cancer. So basically, we ended up with this amazing, success story at the end of it, and the family. This was now actually the point I was trying to make with this picture. We had about 4 parties saying cancer's gone. This was the 4th one, but hopefully it's the last one we ever have. And in fact, I got all my friends together, and we had a big party. It's a bit noisy. We had a big party. And basically celebrated, the fact that I'm now in complete remission. I have to keep going back to, thank you very much. I have to, as I say, my story is not necessarily everybody's story, but the good news is that these trials are now being replicated for lots of people. I have to keep going back to Boston very regularly. Part of the trial is it's a kind of longitudinal study over multiple years. So I'd go back there every couple of months. And And the amazing other thing is that there are other people in New Zealand who've reached out to me about these trials, and there's a guy in Auckland, another guy, Kurt Brunton. I don't know if you've seen his story over the last week. So I've been working with Kurt for about a month. He and I have been talking and meeting, and he's saying very, very similar story. His cancer just keeps coming back and getting there. And I was in Boston just a week and a half ago, and I talked to the doctors there, and they accepted him onto the trial, which is really, really cool. But he's got the same problem as me with this house and this money problem. So his friends are also doing the same thing about raising a lot of money to help Kurt get to the States. I'm 100% confident, touch wood, that, because I'm metal, anyway, touch wood, that he will have the same result as me, because I know that this treatment can work for someone like him. And then lo and behold, the great news, even better news for us all who don't have the ability to sell our house, who don't have the friends network and the wherewithal to get to the States, is that there's work going on here in New Zealand, I'm going to skip that, about this very treatment. And so this is what, a little bit we're going to touch on tomorrow. We definitely don't want to overpromise this. This is very early days, but I was blown away to find out, I got called by the Leukaemia Institute here in Wellington and said, come in and talk to us. And I met Rob, and he said, I just wanted to, we are working on CAR T therapy here in New Zealand. It's incredible. We're nearly ready to do a trial, nearly being sometime in the next year, by the way, not next week. But we're actually thinking that we're going to be able to do the same sorts of things that you did in America, we're going to be able to do here in New Zealand, which is mind-blowing, because this stuff, these guys at the Leukaemia Institute are ahead of the curve. They're way, way ahead of where I thought they'd be. People were asking me, I said, this is 5 years, 10 years away. It's not, it's closer than that. Again, it won't be for everyone, unfortunately, and it won't initially be for everyone. It'll be a very small trial. But the great news is that they have it here in New Zealand. So in a rush of blood to the head, I said to them, how can I help? And they said, well, you could help raise awareness and raise some money. And I said, how much money do you need? And they said, I don't know, $1 million. There's that number again. And I said, okay, I'm going to raise you $1 million. So I'm now on a bit of a crusade, and Rob and I are doing some work together to raise $1 million to help the Leukaemia Institute take this therapy here in New Zealand and roll out clinical trials. So there's going to be some press about it next week. Kurt's actually going to be a part of that. We're going to get some other people involved as well. So if you're sitting on a lazy $500,000 and you don't know what to do with it, write us a check. But there's, you can find out all about it. So basically, the great news is there's this on the horizon for all of us in blood cancer land. These are potential treatments. We're not quite there yet in all cases, but the good news is that help is coming. And for me, as I said, my great outcome is, spoiler alert, I lived. Is only 9 months ago I was told I had less than a year to live. Now I was told again last week in Boston I'm still in complete remission. There's no reason to think that the cancer will come back. The amazing thing about this CAR T cell therapy is that it's a living therapy. Those cells are still inside me, so they're still doing their work. So again, not something for everyone, but I just wanted to let you know that through my journey, that whole positive attitude, the role of luck, the way that you think about what you're going through, the role of supporters, I didn't talk about that enough, but those role of those people around me, those visitors who came in and talked to me, the doctors and the nurses, the people from the society, all that is just such an incredible part of the journey. So for me, it's been an amazing one, and I hope that's been useful to you and interesting. And tomorrow, Rob and I will talk a little bit more detail about how CAR T works, a little bit more about the cost side of it. I'll go into a little detail if you're interested. And if you can't get in that room tomorrow, then you can always find me. I'm very easy to find, and I'm very happy to talk to anybody. So thank you very much. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou.